Today we'll be going over how to draw the eye and surrounding elements. I have attached a PDF cheat sheet that you could find in the description, similar to the one I did for the how to draw the nose videos. There's no way for me to tell how many people downloaded the PDF or found it useful, but let me know in the comments if it's something worth continuing. In regards to eyes are pretty simple, but there's a lot of organic shapes involved, so it helps to be aware of what forms you're drawing and the types of forms that can exist. In our previous videos, we went over how to draw the Loomis method from the front, side, and 3/4 view, while also going over the major planes of the head. As a reminder, let's take a look at the simplified planes around the eyes. Based on these recessed, slanted eye planes, we can see that the eyes are seated inside the skull, and depending on lighting conditions, there's plenty of opportunity to add shadow to these forms or create dramatic lighting that simplifies the forms. A deeper look at the anatomy will show that there are more subtle planes that exist. Let's start with the parts of the skull that you can see, particularly the orbital bones. This is a boxy shape that surrounds the eyeballs, lids, and surrounding tissue. Again, the inside of the orbital is a box with a rounded bottom. The outside of the orbital has a straight up section, a section that tapers in, and then an arc that goes towards the back of the skull. This is nothing new to you. We went over this when we drew the front view using the Loomis method. So we know that outside of the orbital bones we have the temple and the relatively sharp plane change for the side of the head. Inside this boxy shape, we can place the eyeball. Next, we have the iris. The iris is the colorful part of the eye. Of course, some people do have really dark irises. Inside the iris, we have the pupil that gets bigger in low light and smaller in well-lit lighting conditions. And all of that is encapsulated in a little dome called the cornea. Covering the ball, there is a lower lid, an upper lid, and the lacrimal caruncle. The lacrimal caruncle is the pinkish recess near the inner part of the eye. Of course, on the upper and lower lids, we have the eyelashes. On the top outside of the eyeball, there's a region that contains fat tissue, the lacrimal gland, and of course the top part of our orbital bones. All of these volumes come together to make a round pad. We'll simplify this volume by calling it the orbital pad. This area can usually show up as a round surface, almost like a sphere on the outside of the eye. This can be a good area to emphasize when lighting a character. A lot of personality comes out in the area above the eyes, and we'll soon see how different types of orbital pads and eyelids can work to completely change a character. Those are the basic parts of the eye. Now let's talk more about the basic forms using the side view. The eye itself is a sphere, and the pupil and iris are encased in the cornea. The cornea is like a glass bowl that sits on the sphere of the eyeball. It's also important to understand that the eyes look like wedges when we look at them from the side, and the lids create wedges on top of the eyeball wedge. Keep this in mind as you draw your side views. We can also see the orbital pad from the side view, and it still catches a lot of light because it's a round form. The orbital bones are also a round form, but it's more like a cylinder than a sphere. The next video we do in this series will be about the mouth, but after that, we'll make a video on rendering, and we'll emphasize how value changes and shading is different for different types of shapes. I didn't want to get you too bogged down with trying to render at the beginning of this series, but once we are aware of all the different planes and anatomy of the face, rendering it will seem easy. Let's take a look at our cheat sheet and take a good look at the corneas. As I said before, the cornea is like a glass bowl that covers the iris and the pupils. This means that light passes through the cornea and lights up the opposite side. On dark eyes, you probably won't see this effect as much. Instead, darker eyes create opportunities for a lot of specular highlights and reflections that show the environment the character is looking at. In this short demo, you can see I added the reflections of a ring light, a ceiling LED light, a fridge, and the subject's arms. All crudely drawn, but you get the idea. Another way to create contrast and interest in darker eyes is to use a limbal ring. This is a dark ring that people usually have when they're younger, but sometimes it fades as you get older. This ring can create a captivating look, no matter what eye color you have, because of the contrast it creates. One thing to note about the iris is that they should be drawn as soft-edged circles, and they should be drawn as ellipses when we are not looking in a perfectly front or side view. Ellipses are simply circles seen at an angle. To draw an ellipse, you simply choose a direction that you want the ellipse to face. This direction will create the minor axis for our ellipse, which is the smaller width of the ellipse. Thinner ellipses mean that we are seeing the circle in perspective from almost a side view. Fatter ellipses are almost circles seen from the front view. It's important to get this right because the eyes will look off if we draw the ellipses as facing the wrong direction. Now we're going to talk about the different types of eyelids and forms that make up a character. Let's ignore color for now and focus on the different shapes that are created by the upper and lower lids. Of course, the eyes are encapsulated by the lower and upper lids. The lids are often drawn as 3 line segments at the top and curved lines at the bottom. This is a good shape to keep in mind, but eyes don't necessarily follow this pattern all the time. It's more important to draw the eyelids as a helmet that wraps around the eyes. This is something that can only be understood by drawing eyes from reference, and we'll do a lot of that today. As a side note, the lids have volume, so it can be interesting to add highlights to the parts of the eyelids facing up. The areas near the eyeball are often wet, and they often contain specular highlights. In terms of the shape of eyelids, it's important to understand that the angle between the caruncle and the outside of the eye can change from person to person. Let's take a moment to get a grasp of the main types of eyes that can exist. Characteristically, Eastern eyes tend to be more bulbous and thick, which creates a smooth surface on the top and lower lids. Oftentimes, Eastern eyes contain what's known as monolids, which is basically when there's no fold above the eyelid. Characteristically, Eastern eyes also often exhibit epicanthic folds, which is when the eyelid covers the inner corner of the eye containing the lacrimal caruncle. All 3 of these features aren't always found in Eastern eyes, but these are the characteristics that make them look Eastern. For example, this woman has a lot of fat tissue making her look Eastern, but she clearly has double lids and she doesn't have an epicanthic fold. Western eyes tend to be less bulbous and sit further into the skull. Western eyes typically have double lids, which is when there's a slight crease above the eyelid, making it look like there's almost another eyelid. The shorthand for this is just drawing a line that outlines the bottom of the upper lid. When you start getting into a situation where the fat tissue above the upper lid starts dominating the upper lid, we call them hooded lids. I think that's a good overview of most of the eyes you'll encounter. The best thing you can do is to draw the eyes from reference to get familiar with all the different types of eyes. I wanted to emphasize that it's important to draw from reference, so I've been showing you recordings of me drawing 100 pairs of eyes from reference throughout this video. I see drawing from imagination as an application of what I learned when I drew from reference. So get comfy and start drawing from reference so you can increase your ability to improvise and increase your visual library. When it comes to drawing the eye from reference, you're going to want to draw pairs of eyes instead of a single eye. Also, you don't need to know the names of the anatomy I went over in this video, but you're going to want to be aware of the features you see in a given reference and be able to describe it at least to yourself. For example, this woman has hooded eyes and no limbal ring. Being able to describe a character is the first step to creating characters purposefully. Anyway, let's draw this out. Notice that there are specular highlights and reflections of light sources in the eyes. Also notice the eyeball itself. People often make the eyeballs white, but they are closer to a middle gray. An interesting thing to do is to get a picture and use the eye drop tool in your favorite software and see exactly how light or dark the different parts of a person are. This next person has eyes that blur the line between double lids and hooded eyes. The orbital pads are not very prominent. Instead, the narrow hooded nature of the eyes comes from the eyes being so recessed into the skull. The creases all around the eyes show his age. The eyes have a limbal ring and very light eyelashes. The lacrimal caruncle is lower than the outside of the eye. This next person has bulbous eyes that stick out. Instead of having one distinct crease that indicates a double lid, she has many small wrinkles. As I mentioned before, most people in the West have double or hooded lids, but it's possible to have triple or quadruple lids. I wouldn't describe her as having that. Her eyes are too thick to have those type of folds. This next person has recessed eyes that are slightly hooded on the outside of the eyes, and her orbital pads are very round and cylindrical. She has light eyes and a limbal ring. The lack of tissue around the eyes gives the illusion of the eye being bulbous. The lacrimal caruncle and the outside of the lower lids are in line. This picture is pretty cool. You can actually look into his eyes and clearly see the room that he's in, and his eyes are heavily hooded. There pretty much isn't any orbital pad. It's all just the top of the orbital bones. His eyes are not very thick. The lacrimal caruncle and the outside of the eyes are in line. This person has double lids and thick eyelashes. Her eyes are not very bulbous. She has dark eyes and a limbal ring. Her orbital pads are round. They aren't big or small, they're somewhere in the middle. These last pair of eyes are pretty bulbous. The left eye looks like it's a monolid, while the right eye looks like it's a double lid. This isn't really weird, in fact, my eyes are similar, but I'll raise you a lid. My left eye is a double lid, and my right eye is a triple lid. Anyway, these eyes have a slight epicanthic fold, some of the lacrimal caruncle is visible, and some of it is covered. The orbital pads are dominated by the bulbous nature of the eyes. And that's about it. I hope I was able to give you some insight into how to draw the eyes. At this point, you can say that you've been taught. Now you just need to learn by drawing from reference. As a reminder, links to all the references used in this video are in the description. Also, I've linked a PDF cheat sheet in the description. Let me know if these videos and cheat sheets are helpful. In any case, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, be safe, take care, and later days.